There's a house on your street with a plain lawn and a 10-year-old sedan parked in the driveway that nobody ever looks at twice. The person who lives there is quietly worth more than everyone else on the block combined. You've driven past them 100 times and assumed the money was 3 doors down, with the leased SUV and the watch he keeps mentioning at every barbecue. He isn't the rich one. By the end of this, you'll understand exactly why the wealthiest people you know are the ones you never noticed. Here's the strange thing about real money. The more of it a person actually has, the less you can tell from the outside. It goes quiet. The flashiest driveway on the street often belongs to the deepest debt, and the plainest one, the boring car, the same jacket for 6 winters, often belongs to the person with a 7-figure account nobody has ever heard about. There's a name for this now. People call it stealth wealth, and it isn't an accident. It's a decision, made on purpose, over and over, for years. Once you understand why people make it, you start seeing it everywhere. Part of why this feels backwards is that we've been trained to read wealth exactly wrong. Every feed you scroll rewards the flash, the unboxing, the keys to the new car, the vacation shot from the balcony. We absorb 1,000 images a day, quietly teaching us that money is something you display. So when we actually meet someone with real wealth and they show us nothing at all, our brains file them under ordinary and move on. The whole system is calibrated to make the loud look rich and the rich look invisible. That illusion is exactly what the quiet ones are hiding behind. Start with how many of these people are actually out there. Roughly 1 in every 12 American adults is a millionaire today. Which means the odds are good, you already know several, and you have no idea, because they went out of their way to make sure you couldn't tell. And they don't look the way television taught you they would. Large surveys of real millionaires keep turning up the same, almost boring details. Most of them use a grocery list every time they shop. Most of them keep eating out spending under a couple $100s a month. Most of them went to an ordinary state school, not some name-brand university. These are not people burning money to look impressive. They're people who quietly refuse to. The bigger myth those same surveys destroy is that wealthy people are simply born that way. The overwhelming majority of American millionaires are first-generation rich. They didn't inherit it. They built it the slow way, steadily funding a retirement account, paying down a mortgage, letting decades do the heavy lifting. Very few of them ever held some big executive title. Teachers show up on that list constantly. So do engineers, accountants, and small business owners, the kind of person who mowed his own lawn for 30 years and drove the same truck the entire time. And that group keeps growing. More people than ever now have workplace retirement accounts that have quietly crossed the $1 million mark, most of them without anyone around them ever suspecting it. Here's why that detail matters more than almost anything else in this video. If most millionaires built it themselves out of ordinary jobs and ordinary paychecks, then the quiet path isn't some secret reserved for people born lucky. It's a set of choices, repeated patiently, that almost anyone with a steady income can copy. The barrier was never a trust fund. The barrier is that the quiet path looks like nothing while you're walking it, and the loud path looks like everything. So most people abandon the boring road and chase the exciting one straight into a hole. Nowhere does this show up more clearly than in the driveway. Ask people to guess what a millionaire drives, and they'll say something German, something Italian, something low to the ground. The real answer is almost funny. It's Toyota, then Honda, then a handful of other completely unremarkable brands. Most households earning well into 7 figures a year don't drive a luxury badge at all. They drive the same dependable, forgettable cars as everyone else. This goes all the way to the very top. Some of the richest people alive have spent years photographed behind the wheel of an ordinary sedan, or wearing the same plain shirt to work every day, or still living in the same modest house they bought decades before they became famous for their fortune. These are people who could buy a fleet of supercars before breakfast. They choose the boring version on purpose. And that single choice is the whole story in miniature. So if the wealthy can afford anything and they choose to look like nothing, The real question is why? Why does money get quieter the more of it you have? There are a handful of reasons, and each one will change how you see the people around you. The first reason is the coldest one. To the wealthy, showing off is a tax, and they refuse to pay it. Think about what a status purchase actually does to your money. A luxury SUV that stickers at $70,000 starts losing value the second you drive it off the lot. Compare that to a reliable car at half the price that does the exact same job of getting you places. That gap, invested steadily for 30 years, doesn't just sit there. It compounds into hundreds of thousands of dollars you never see because you never spent it in the first place. That's the real price of the fancy car, not the sticker. The decades of growth quietly handed away to impress people at a stoplight, and the flashy car is never just the car. It drags a whole ecosystem behind it. Higher insurance, pricier repairs, sometimes even a bigger house that starts to feel required just to match it. One loud purchase quietly multiplies into a dozen more. The wealthy see the entire chain, not just the price tag, and every dollar spent looking rich is a dollar that can never make them rich, so they stop spending it. The second reason is about who you're actually trying to convince. Loud spending is almost always a message aimed at other people. It says, "Look at me. I made it. I matter." And the people who need to send that message the loudest are usually the least sure it's true. New money, insecure money, the kind of money that has something to prove and no proof yet, that's the money that shouts. Real, settled wealth stops needing the applause. When your own bank account genuinely has your back, the opinion of a stranger in a parking lot becomes worth exactly nothing to you. The retired teacher on your street spent 40 years quietly filling a retirement account and never once felt the itch to prove anything to the neighbors. He already knew what he had. The person who has to tell you they're doing well usually isn't. The one who never brings it up often is. There's a piece of psychology underneath all of this that makes it sharper still. The thrill of a new purchase fades astonishingly fast. Buy the dream car, and within a few weeks, the excitement flattens out into just the thing you drive, while the payment stays for years. Chasing that feeling means always needing a louder purchase to get the same short hit, and it never actually ends. The wealthy tend to figure this out early. The rush from a new object is temporary. The calm that comes from real security never wears off. Once you've felt the second one, the first one starts to look like a scam. This shift is old enough that economists gave it names. A century ago, it was called conspicuous consumption, spending built entirely to broadcast status outward, to a crowd. Somewhere along the way, researchers studying modern spending noticed the wealthy had quietly switched strategies, pouring money instead into things nobody can see from the street. Top-tier education, healthcare, expert guidance, and above all, time bought back from their own schedules. The signals still exist. They just point sideways now, toward other insiders who recognize them, instead of downward at a crowd meant to be impressed. The next reason is simpler and more human. Looking rich paints a target on your back. The moment people believe you have money, everything shifts. Friends start doing quiet math about what you owe them. Distant relatives resurface. Every conversation grows a hidden agenda you can feel but can't quite name. Visible wealth turns you into a mark for the loan that never comes back, for the business idea that just needs your check to work. The wealthy learn this fast, often the hard way. Discretion protects the money, and it protects the relationships too. When nobody can tell what you have, people have to like you for something other than your wallet. And here's one more truth that takes the air out of the flex entirely. People notice your things far less than you imagine. You clock the nicest car in a parking lot for about 4 seconds, then forget it forever. And everyone else does exactly the same with yours. The audience you're spending all that money to impress is barely paying attention, and the few who are won't remember by tomorrow. The wealthy understood a long time ago that the applause they were buying was faint, brief, and gone almost the instant it arrived. It's a terrible trade, and they simply stopped making it. So, what are the quiet ones actually buying with all that silence? This is the part that matters most. The real luxury was never the car or the watch. It was freedom. A paid-off house, a retirement account filled to the top, an emergency fund deep enough that a lost job becomes an inconvenience instead of a catastrophe. What they're actually buying is the power to say no and mean it, to a bad boss, to a deal that doesn't serve them, to a life they never chose in the first place. Money invested quietly becomes options, and options are the one thing you can never see from a car window. Think about what that freedom looks like on an ordinary Tuesday. The boss makes an unreasonable demand, and the quiet millionaire can simply decline because a few missed paychecks would change nothing about their life. The industry shifts, and they can retrain or rest or start something of their own on their own timeline. That's what all those boring decisions were buying the entire time. Not stuff. Room to breathe. The loud spender, meanwhile, is often trapped in the exact job he hates, precisely because he needs every check to keep covering the image he built. There's a longer game running underneath all of this, too. Quiet wealth tends to survive. Loud wealth tends to evaporate. A staggering amount of money is set to pass down through families over the coming decades, and study after study shows a large share of it gets spent away within a generation or two, usually by heirs who learned how to look rich instead of how to stay rich. The families that hold on are almost always the quiet ones. Households where wealth was a habit and a set of values, not a performance. Now flip the whole thing around, because this is where it gets uncomfortable. If the truly wealthy are hiding it, who exactly is doing all the flashing? A lot of the time, it's people who genuinely cannot afford it. The neighbor with the newest truck and the watch he keeps mentioning is very often financing that entire image on credit, one missed payment away from it all coming apart. On paper, he looks like the richest man on the street. In reality, the truck is financed, the watch is on a plan, and the savings are nearly empty. The chase to look wealthy is the exact thing keeping him from ever becoming wealthy, while the quiet man 3 doors down in the 10-year-old sedan could buy and sell him 10 times over without ever saying a word about it. That contrast points straight at the trap almost everyone falls into. Comparison is the fastest way to go broke. The second you start measuring your life against the loudest people around you, you begin spending money you don't have on things you don't need, to impress people who are not thinking about you at all. The wealthy stepped off that track a long time ago. They quit a game the moment they realized it could only be lost. So how do you actually put this to work? You start by treating the plain driveway as a strategy, not a compromise. Buy the reliable version of things, let it age with a little pride, and invest the difference the flashier version would have cost you. Put the money into things that grow. Automate it so it happens every month whether you feel motivated or not, because willpower fails and systems don't. And when the itch shows up to prove something to people who honestly aren't thinking about you nearly as much as you fear, remember what it actually costs. A moment of admiration from a stranger, paid for with years of your own freedom. None of this means you can never enjoy your money. The quiet ones spend plenty on what genuinely matters to them. A good trip, a comfortable home, time with the people they love. The difference is they spend on purpose for themselves rather than on autopilot for an audience. Which brings us back to that quiet house on your street. The tidy lawn, the unremarkable car, the person you never once gave a second thought to. They were not falling behind. They were miles ahead, and they simply chose not to announce it to anyone. That's the pattern once you finally learn to see it. The richer people get, the quieter they get, because they've understood, at last, that wealth was never about being seen. It was about being free. So tell me, do you know one of these quiet millionaires, the person nobody suspected until you somehow found out the truth? Or have you caught yourself spending to impress people you don't even really like? Let me know down in the comments.